The Rancor monster's hungry again. Let's feed him. Don't do it.
Luke Skywalker, Gamorrean Guard, new Rancor monster and Rancor Keeper action figures, each sold separately.
You'll regret this. Wait till he gets his claws into a Jedi Knight.
Whoa, some jaws. This is my only chance.
He's wounded. We better get in there.
You'll never get out alive, Gamorrean Guard.
New Rancor monster, action figures, each sold separately, from Kenner's Star Wars Return of the Jedi collection.
Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perrone, and joining me today I have Michael, and Kyle. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hello. Hello, gentlemen. Hello.
Today we are going to talk about an event we recently visited called ToyCon New Jersey, or ToyConNJ. This is an event that is an offshoot off of other weekly toy shows that are run here nearby in Wayne, New Jersey. And before we get to the main show that we just went to, the bigger of the shows, let's talk a little bit about how we found out about these shows taking place in the first place. I remember a few weeks ago, I think it was around the time of May the 4th, which is the May the 4th Be With You Day, that pseudo holiday, the made up holiday really that is, Star Wars related. We were trying to figure out if there were any events having to do with May the 4th, around town, and we really didn't find too many of them. While I was searching for local events taking place, in a huge list of different conventions and shows and all types of things like this, in the local area, having to do with a lot of different things, not just toys or even sci-fi or Star Warsy stuff. In the mix there, they had something listed as the Wayne Toy Show, which apparently takes place just about every weekend throughout the year. So Kyle and I decided to give it a shot. They were only open for a few hours. It's not like a full day event. It's on a Sunday. It's from early in the morning till around 2 in the afternoon. So it wasn't the type of thing that we were going to be like, okay, we're going to be here all day, so this is going to be one of these day-long events. So we gave it a try, and we were only there maybe for about an hour or two. It was super reasonably priced. It was only about $2, I believe, a head to get in. And what it is, it's, if you're used to any sort of other kind of shows, if, people are into crafts, whatever they seem to collect, whether they're collecting coins or stamps or whatever, antique dolls or anything like that, this is specifically toy related. It's a toy show. And it's similar to if you go to a convention and the dealer room. It's basically a smaller version of the dealer room. This particular setup is in Wayne, and they use a local firehouse, as the location of where they lay everything out, for everybody to see. They even, it's pretty packed in terms of how many tables they have in there. And they even have some outdoor tables, I guess, when they have too many dealers. So we went there once by ourselves, Kyle and I, and then on another occasion we took Mike, because we were like, have you guys been lately to a toy show? It's like, well, that's interesting. So do you remember, Mike, when you went?
Yeah, like I said, it was in a firehouse. I remember we had the parking lot. It's all gravel.
Yeah, right across.
You just went in, and it's like a marketplace. It's just, like you said, the dealer's room. It's nothing but toys, but it's vintage toys, action figures, up to new toys. It's a little bit of everything. So it's a real toy show that they used to have years ago before the internet.
Wow.
When you think about it, before the internet, if you wanted to buy games and toys, action figures, all that stuff.
It's like an indoor flea market.
Yeah.
Of toys.
Of toys.
Right. Now, when we went, they were, I think, a little heavier than normal when it comes to Star Wars merchandise, because when we went for the first time with Kyle, it was, again, May the 4th. But the second time we went, it was more of their regular, selection of toys, and it's not always that Star Wars centric. But still, it's the type of thing where, again, depending on what you're looking at or what you look for, you might find some pretty cool deals because, again, you're not dealing in, this isn't a convention, so they can't go nuts like they do in a convention when it comes to pricing and that sort of thing. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of items that are out of our price range, but there's a lot of like loose stuff. If you're into box stuff, it's there, but there's also a lot of loose stuff, which is what I collect. I collect loose Star Wars toys. So from this particular event, we found out that they were going to do, for the first time, this particular person who runs the show, his name is Phil DeMario, was going to actually do a bigger one, like over double the amount of dealers that he normally has on these weekly shows, bigger location. And that is where we went recently. We went to his ToyConNJ, New Jersey, obviously, which is the big version of this event. This one was located in Parsippany. I would say it's over twice as big as what the normal location is in terms of how many dealers they have. Instead of one room, they had about 2 and you could say a half rooms because, there was a hallway area where they had dealers also. There was an exhibitor room also. And the dealer area, like I said, one room I think might have been like a basketball court or basketball area, like a local, was it a PAL?
I was going to say it was located in the Police Athletic League in Parsippany. So, yeah, you had the whole gym. There was a sub room, the hallway to the meeting rooms. They put dealers. So, yeah, they squeezed in a lot more dealers. I think it's almost 3 times the size.
Possibly. And the good thing about it is that, it's not like you go to a convention and you can't get through aisles. You can't look at stuff because it's so crowded. No, it was business-wise, I'm not sure if that's good or not, but for the people attending, it's really comfortable to be able to actually go through these aisles, comfortably, being able to actually turn around and go back to another aisle without having to go all the way around because you can't get through or something like that.
It's like an old-fashioned show, like old comic shows. Me and Mike used to go back in the 80s. They used to run like an auditorium, and there used to be a bunch of dealers. But
those used to be more comic related?
Yeah, more comic related by VHS tapes back then. There was an old-fashioned feel to it, I felt, at least. Don't
get me wrong, they did have a comic book presence there, but it was mainly toys. Like that was the main thing you could find. Comics was not the majority of the material they were selling.
Yeah, I think there was only like 2, maybe 3 dealers that actually had comic books. It's toys.
But you also had a poster guy. Also, right, you had a weapons guy.
Yeah, books, the novelizations rare books, from the movies and TV shows. But it's still mostly a toy show.
Right.
But now, it's a collectible show.
Right. Again, it depends on what you're into. Now, let's talk a little bit about the type of stuff we found there. Why don't we start with Kyle? Based on what you've seen in the past in the smaller show, in the Wayne show, what were the type of things you were looking for in this show, and did you find any of them?
I was looking mainly for just Legos, like Lego figures mainly. At the first Wayne show I went to, I found some imports from China. And then at the second one, I found some more that I wanted to get. And at the ToyCon, I found some like rare ones. I found some more, and I bought those. They had like 4 different dealers at the Wayne show. They only had 1. Yeah, that was like the highlight. I didn't really buy anything else other than imports.
I think I also saw that you bought a set, because sometimes what they do now is they open the set, they remove the figures, and they sell you the set cheaper, right?
Oh, yeah. Basically, there's a couple guys actually who were selling Lego sets. They took out the minifigures, and the price dropped by like 75%. And so I got a $30 set for $5 just because I didn't have the minifigures in it.
Right, and then they resell the obviously, that's how
and then they sell the figures separately. But I didn't buy the figures. I just bought the set.
Because a lot of people are just figure collectors.
Like they had some $50 sets for like $15. And it was really nice stuff.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Mike?
At the Wayne show, funny, my thing, I bought a couple of books. Bought books on, the one was the Illustrated Night to Remember by Walter Lord, about the Titanic and such. And I bought a couple music books, like, there was John Lennon Playboy interview and the John Lennon Penthouse interview back from 1980. I forgot who wrote it. So I actually bought those books at the Wayne place, because I usually go with open mind. I walk around and see what strikes my fancy. I bought that, and I bought a Blu-ray of Battleship Yamato. I bought the second last copy.
Very popular item.
Yes, because I think Mike bought the last copy.
That's right.
So that's what I bought in the Wayne show. And in the big Jersey Con, I bought a Lost in Space robot.
That was a nice looking robot.
That was from, it's based on the original Lost in Space back in the 1960s. But it was made when they made the movie back in '89, I believe.
Yeah, somewhere
around there. So they made a whole bunch of retro robot,
and this was a brand new item, I believe.
It was still in the box.
It was totally
never
mint.
opened. And actually, I got it from my brother. Because he was a big Lost in Space fan when he was a little kid. Mm-hmm. And his favorite toy as a little kid was the Lost in Space robot, remote controls. But it's not exactly the same. But I just got it because sentimental reasons.
How about you, Mike? I know you came back with a bag full of goodies.
The Wayne show, I picked up the Godzilla 2014 NECA figure.
NECA?
NECA figure. And in the weekend show, yeah, I was the big spender of the whole group. I picked up a lot of different things. The movie poster dealer was there, and I was able to pick up some Varon 8x10 black and white photos from the press kits. So that was pretty cool to add to my collection.
I remember that.
I picked up 2 Jaegers, and I cannot remember what the name of the Jaegers were, but it was from Pacific Rim.
One was the Chinese
One was the Chinese,
group,
the red
and the other one was the
Tornado or
Australian
something.
group?
Yeah, the Australian.
Okay.
So I picked those up.
What about Minya?
And
How can you forget that?
And I'm thinking what else I bought was, yes, I did find, for me, I always look around, being the Godzilla fan that I am, just what other Godzilla dealers, since the Godzilla movies become popular, obviously it is popular, a lot of the dealers have been pulling out all their toys. So I picked up a Minya from Godzilla Final Wars, and I picked up a Bandai 64 Godzilla without the tag. So I was the big spender, and I almost bought a Godzilla head. It was a small rubber head. The dealer had it. He was selling it for $150 when I first went over to him. And later in the day, I went back and I was looking for it. Maybe I was going to try and talk him down a little bit and possibly pick it up for $100. But he actually sold it. So he was a happy camper. But anyway, other than that, that's all I bought. But there's a lot of stuff to look at. Like I said, they board games and a lot of classic stuff in the 80s, wrestling figures, a lot of stuff still in the box. You know, and there's a lot of things I would have bought too. I didn't even look at some of the other
I know there was one guy selling old
toy dealers.
Disney collectibles, like Disney only collectibles, like ceramic mugs and plates and stuff like that. It's like really, antique-y looking stuff.
Yeah, again, a lot of things. There was toy soldiers.
Matchbox. There was a Matchbox. Like really old Matchbox cars.
Yeah, I was going to say the soldiers, it's actually the metal.
Oh, like the pewter
I think they were,
ones?
it's not pewter. I think they were steel.
Oh, wow.
Or I'm not even sure if they were tin. But I remember my uncle had those, and we used to put them under the tree. It was like some of the toys that were passed down and Grandma never got rid of. And I saw one of them, or the same series was actually there. Theirs were in much better condition than ours. But again, there's a lot of stuff, and I didn't even go through all the movie posters and the lobby cards because I probably would have spent more money. But I needed to save my money for GeekFest, which is coming up next week.
And Mike is definitely going to
report, we'll be spending money over there
on that one. Well, as we mentioned before, there is a lot of Star Wars stuff there. Even though it wasn't May the 4th, they did have a good Star Wars presence, not only with newer Star Wars toys, but vintage. And vintage...
And the Legion, was it 101st?
Yeah,
Legion
the 501st.
Was there.
The 501st, they had some members there in full regalia with their costumes and guns and everything.
Mandalorian warriors walking around.
That's right. And
R2.
Yeah, that's right. Somebody had a remote control life-size R2. But again, speaking of Star Wars, that's what I seem to gravitate the most lately, is looking for some cheap... again, I'm in the loose category, so I don't care how beat up they are. The mint stuff, the stuff that's not even mint, but in box condition, in a box, I can't even afford that. That stuff is really expensive. But I was able to pick up. It's funny because, when you go to these shows, you have to look around a lot because the prices will vary. I was able to pick up a Rancor, an original Rancor, for a fraction of what somebody else was selling it for there. And I don't know if I just got lucky or that was just the price. But it's one of these toys that I never had and I always wanted it. And I was able to pick it up. And also a Imperial Transport. This is that weird vehicle that was not in the movies, but it was sold. In a way, it's almost like one of the first, if not even the first, EU vehicle introduced in the Star Wars line, especially in the first film, because by the time you get to Empire, you start to see the mini rigs and all these made up ships that they started introducing into toys because they wanted kids to buy these extra vehicles that are cheaper than the large size vehicles. But during Star Wars, they actually did release this thing called the Imperial Trooper Transporter.
I think it was just because people with figures, if you didn't have the case, that was easy.
Right.
You could play with it, and then you have 12 figures. You could
you can stick some figures in there. But it was again the first time that they actually released something that had nothing to do with the movie. The funny thing about this toy is that I remember it came with a tiny little comic book inside, and what the comic book explained was that this is the transport vehicle that came up to the Jawa Sandcrawler and blew it up and attacked it and pretended to be sand people doing it. and then they kind of drove away. This is a little comic book that was included, in the packaged.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not, it came with that little comic book, which you're like, okay, so that's what happened. When Luke and Ben get there, it's like, oh, look, the tracks and the footprints.
The Sand People's tracks are not side by side.
Yeah, they travel in numbers. There's more the precise firing pattern of an Imperial Stormtrooper. That kind of. Well, again, it's a weird toy. Like Mike says, it holds about 6 figures around it, and it has room inside for a couple of more characters to put in there. But the funny thing is that this particular toy, it's an electronic toy. It actually talks. The one I bought, obviously the talking mechanism doesn't work anymore, but they actually remade it like a year later, I think it was Sears. They repackaged it for Sears without the electronics.
Really?
As an exclusive. It's like, well, it's not an exclusive. Well, it is now. It's exclusive. So it's a really weird item that I always wanted to get. And I also was able to find a Probot. The Probot figure actually came with an entire set, which was the Rebel turret, some like snow plasticky thing, and the Probot. But
so it's like the play set?
It's like a play set. It was like back when they were making play sets. And again, I love that set. I never had it. But the Probot I definitely always wanted because in theory, just like a lot of these other toys, it's an action figure. It's a robot that is not sold individually or was not sold individually. So it's something I wanted, to have as part of my vintage collection. So for me, again, I'm looking at the loose, cheapy stuff. Perfect. I was able to find some final, items that hopefully, can add to my collection. Now, aside from the dealer room, the other thing they have is a separate, smaller room, which is like a panel room where I believe they had some writers or artists or comic book writers. They had, their own little panels there with Q&As. We attended actually one panel, which actually brings us back to an earlier show we did a few episodes ago where we interviewed Jordan and Steve from Toy Hunter. Steve was there doing his own panel having to do with his experiences as a toy dealer, as one of the stars of Toy Hunter, and we were able to sit there and listen to the Q&A and the presentation that he did, which a couple of people there were asking questions and he was telling them all about it. Let's listen to a little bit of that.
We go into houses where there's showcases or there's rubber tubs. There's like, this is my collection. And it's hard to put all out in one show, one room. So we're digging in the Rubbermaid tubs, and we do make a mess. You got 15 hours there. We're ransacking the place, and then we do clean it up afterward. So it's so funny, And then we do buy, and some people they do get mad and say, "I thought you were taking the whole place." I'm like, "No, we can't." Because we're there for that one day. Then the next day we're back on the plane and we're off on the next shoot. So but a lot of times we have X amount of time. If it's good, if we could save 2 hours, maybe go 13 hours a day, and then we got at least another hour to purchase stuff. That's what I like to, And we give everybody the fair price, And some people do look on eBay before we get there, or the internet, or whatever it's going for, Amazon, and they show us the paperwork, and we're just like, well, fine, you sell it then. We don't want to cheat you out. They said, but this is what we got to make money. So we're going to give you half. We'll give you 50%. If you don't like it, we'll just do it on camera. And that's sometimes we have to do. Or they're willing to sell it, and then they're like, at the end, they're like, you know what, I don't want to sell it now. So that, we have to cut it because it's got to be real a little bit,
So when is the deal done? Is it going to be you guys shake hands or,
No, it doesn't matter, no, because we can still shake hands if they can still back out.
Wow.
And then that's like a waste. It does happen, Then we have a waste, that's a lot of money that day,
Now, the other thing that we also were able to sit down and, which is also a great excuse to sit down and rest a little because, just like in a convention, you're on your feet the entire day. And, we were not there for only 45 minutes like we were when we do the Sunday shows. We were there for quite a number of hours. And like I said before, it was good to sit down and because we were able to watch the costume contest they had, which they had, like 2 different categories, kids and then adults. My daughter did participate in the kid one. She unfortunately did not win, but she had a very cute costume there. As Gur from Invader Zim, one of her favorite animated characters. But we got to see a lot of other costumes and contestants and that sort of thing. Now, the other thing that I was able to do was walk around a little bit and interview a few of the dealers because, some of these people are doing this as a hobby. Some people do it as a business. And some people actually, are still collecting. They're both collectors and dealers at the same time. So I walked around a little bit asking them about, that sort of thing. Let's listen to a little of that.
My name is Vinny. I'm just doing toy shows all the time.
Do you do anything online or just through the shows?
Here and there, but mostly shows,
And what do you specialize in?
Probably more modern toys, Star Wars, He-Man, Hot Wheels, Legos, stuff like that.
I noticed you do have a lot of Lego stuff here. Are you a collector yourself or just a dealer?
Yes.
And what kind of stuff do you collect?
I collect mostly He-Man classics and then odd Harry Potter items here and there,
What would you say are your big ticket items here today?
I'm pretty fair priced, I'm not looking to kill anybody, so a couple of the big Transformers are high ticket, but that's just because they're expensive to begin with.
You think some of these items could be like holy grail items to some collectors?
I don't think that I have anything that's like holy grail, if you will, but somebody's looking for the right thing, and they find it, it's whatever's special to them,
Cool. Thank you very much.
I'm Andrew Agnello. My store is Andrew's Toys.
Tell me about the type of toys that you specialize in, if any, unless you have a lot of different stuff. But I can see here there's certainly a big Star Wars influence.
Yes, we definitely do focus in Star Wars quite a bit. I've been collecting for a while myself. We've been in business for about 10 years now. And so we specialize in modern action figures as well as vintage, statues, and other types of Star Wars collectibles.
Cool. Now, speaking of vintage, are you a Star Wars kid from the 70s? Did you have your own vintage collection?
I actually missed that. I'm a little young, so I did not grow up with them, unfortunately, but I definitely have an appreciation for the original trilogy, and I'm working on completing my own vintage figure set myself.
What do you think the people that have been coming up to you here are more interested in vintage or more of the modern stuff?
I think it's been a good mix. You have a lot of parents who are coming here looking at vintage and seeing it as, oh, that's something that I had, showing it to their kids. Yeah, the kids, are wanting the newer figures, such as like the Black Series, but they always reach for the Boba Fett. So it's really good seeing that, you get those characters across both generations. Are
you, just like many other dealers, salivating, waiting for the new Star Wars movies to come out so there'll be more merchandising and hopefully Hasbro will be involved?
Yes, I'm definitely excited for the movies just because it'll be great to see Star Wars on the big screen again. More toys is always great as well for my collection as well as for business. I'm sure Hasbro will continue to make great figures for the movie.
Are you the type of collector that opens up his stuff or keeps it all mint in box?
Most of my stuff is mint in box, and if I have something opened, it means there's another one mint in the box somewhere.
Thank you very much.
Alan Fariello, name of my company is Digital Realm Models and Toys.
What kind of toys do you focus on the most, or do you do a combination of just about everything you can think of?
Mostly the stuff that I buy and sell for my collection and my business are vintage 70s and 80s, sci-fi and space-oriented stuff.
Are you a collector yourself personally, or just as a business?
I've been collecting since 92, and then I turned into a business in 97.
Wow. Is there any specific type of toys you collect, or, again, just like your business, a little bit of everything?
Mostly vintage Star Wars, but all offshoots of that.
Are you an opener or a mint-in-box type of person?
Both. I love it all.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, lastly, I have a quick interview I did with Phil DeMario, who's the guy who actually runs this show and the Wayne shows. He was able to give me a few minutes and tell me a little bit about how he puts the show together and, what he tries to achieve and, how things are working out for him and about how these shows might continue in the future. Hi, we're here with Phil from ToyCon, New Jersey. Now, Phil, tell me, I've been to some of your Wayne shows. How is this one different?
Well, it's a larger scale. It's almost 3 times the tables. We're getting dealers from probably 4 or 5 states instead of your typical tri-county area, tri-state area. Of course, it's in a different town. It's in Parsippany instead of Wayne.
How many of these do you do a year, these bigger shows?
This is our premier one, but our next one is, we've already booked for October. October 18th and 19th is going to be our second one.
In the same location?
Yes, at the Parsippany PAL.
Excellent. How long have you been in the toy collecting industry business?
Been running shows for almost 23 years now.
Wow, it's funny because I was at Steve Savino's panel and he was telling us about how he knew you from back then and you guys been working at this for years now.
Steve's one of our loyal vendors that started with us way back when, and he's been almost at every show.
Wow. Now, are you personally a collector also?
I was.
What did you used to collect?
Monster toys. Monster movies, monster toys, books, sci-fi, horror. But as I get older, different priorities, change, and I don't collect much anymore. I get more fun out of seeing new collectors and younger kids come on now with their dads starting collecting. It's more fun to me to see that than to actually collect.
Now, how are you enjoying so far having guest panelists and wrestling people and all types of that normally on the Wayne show, it's a smaller locale. You can't really go that big. But are you enjoying that ability to be able to bring those kind of people in?
Oh, most definitely. And these celebrities, the guests, the comic artists, all that come here come out of the goodness of their own heart. Their autographs are very reasonable. They take free photos, which you don't get at some of the major conventions. They're just a give-back type of panels and celebrities and things like that.
That's a good point, because I noticed a lot of times, whether it's New York Comic Con or even celebrations that I've been to in the past, you pay up front to get in, and then once you're inside, you're like, you can't afford half the stuff. But this is kind of like the best of a convention, because you get the dealer room, which is, in my opinion, the best thing. Being able to step into a dealer room and interact with all these sellers, and especially finding a lot of vintage toys, which that's one of the things I'm noticing here. You got a lot of vintage stuff.
Oh, most definitely, and it follows through from us running the show for over 20-something years. And the thing with our show is we try to keep the admission down as reasonable as possible. And our vendor tables, we try to keep much of the proceeds, the profits that we make, we actually kick back towards the vendor tables, so their prices stay cheaper actually at the table. They're not paying crazy prices for their table and then have to jack the prices up to the customers. So it's kind of like a reverse snowball effect.
They can actually turn a profit.
Yes, and it shows in their prices at the tables here. You can really do well at these shows.
Great. Well, I had a great time. My family was here. We all had a great time, and we can't wait till October. But obviously, in the meantime, we'll be attending your regular monthly ones in Wayne. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and it's great to have loyal, attendees like yourself and the family. Thanks.
Guys, how do you feel about returning to one of these toy shows in the future? I know they're doing another one come October, one of these bigger ones. Is this something you guys would, as collectors, is this a good thing? Is this worth it in terms of being able to find some cool stuff?
I would go back. I would definitely go back. It's like I said, it's good to go back to these shows and support them. And you never know what you find. You might find some lost treasure.
It's the other thing about it that we talked with Phil about is the fact that it's only $5 for this show. It's $2 for the Wayne show. It's not like when you go to one of these major conventions where you're spending $30, $40, $50, $60 just to walk in the door. Instead of throwing all that money at the company that's running it, it's a little easier to put that money in your pocket and throw it at the dealers that are there in a way, which I guess makes them happy.
Right, and I think, again, you said it before, this is the charms of the small shows back in the 80s, before eBay and the internet took it over, where you get to walk around and see a lot of different things. And that's why it's worth it. It's bringing the charm back, and to be honest, we need to bring back some of these smaller shows where you can have fun.
You mentioned eBay. Saving on shipping is a big deal, because even on eBay, you can get some great deals in terms of the price of an item, but then you might get hit with a $3, $6, $10 shipping charge, depending on how outrageous the item is. And they're not paying that money that whatever you're paying on shipping, you're not, because it's not.
Yeah, and I always remember I would laugh. I would try to sell a comic book for $2, and I would charge $3 shipping and handling. Somebody else would sell the same book for $1. They got a bid, and the shipping and handling was $9.95. And it's like, really, people? And that's just the point.
Or the people that would not combine shipping. That they'll charge you $3 for every item, and they won't cut you a break. And it's like, oh my God, sometimes you end up spending more in shipping than on the actual item you're buying.
Right.
Which is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And that's, again, with the charm. And why I was saying I think we need to get back with some of these small shows. And even though this wasn't a small show, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying it's small compared to New York Comic Con.
Right. The madness that is.
The Manhattan shows that are still out there.
The 100,000 attendee, that you're talking about.
And that's it. And again, there's so many toys, especially vintage toys that you're into, modern toys. And now that I started picking up the Jaegers, I'm going to have to start picking up some of the other Jaeger figures.
Why not?
Because, you can't stop at 2. I got to get Knifehead. I got to get the Kaiju.
Now, did you open your figure?
Of course. I opened them up. You know that. We opened them here in the house when we got back.
That's right.
So, but I do agree it's good to go to, and I think people should check it out. And like I said, it's reasonable, and there's a lot of things to look at.
The other thing is that, in a smaller venue like this, you can practice your haggling techniques. In other words, a lot of times, whatever they're asking for something, you try to talk them down a little bit, and sometimes you meet halfway with a lot of these dealers. Within reason, they will usually, a lot of times people will, mark up their items, you bid down a little bit, and then you meet each other in the middle and you come up with a good price. The other thing to remember is also that, and this is one of the things that happened to me when I was there, was when they're ready to close, especially on the second day, even though we weren't there the second day, when they're ready to close, it's a good time to come back and try to offer a deal again, because if you don't agree on a price, when they're ready to close, they might take that price anyway because they don't want to take the stuff home. And it's worth it sometimes for them to sell it for a little lower price than to have to bring it back to their location.
It was funny that you mentioned that. When I bought that Lost in Space robot, it was marked $75, which is cheaper than I saw on eBay. Because eBay I saw it for $100.
Ooh.
So I was going back and forth, walking back and forth a couple of times. Then I went up to the guy who went for Lost in Space robot. He said 75. And I said, what about 60? So he said 65. So, okay, we just agreed on 65.
That's great. That's great.
Actually, I got $10. Like I said, but I saw on eBay a week and a half ago, before that.
Wow.
$100. The cheapest one I saw online was 85. So I even made a
and
deal
was
on that.
the eBay one with shipping or without shipping?
Without shipping.
Oh my God, that would have been like $110, $115.
So again, the guy, it was marked 75.
So you got it for about half the price if you think about it.
Yeah, so.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's something to remember always is like, again, don't be, if you're going to haggle with somebody, if it's a $50 item, don't offer them $10. If you're within, I don't know, maybe 20%, 15% of the price, there's a little wiggle room there.
Well, you guys were lucky because I wasn't. I picked up my 2 Jaegers, and I was trying to get $4 knocked off.
I was like,
she
Mike, make her offer.
No, 44. Yep, 40, 44. All right, 44. So you guys were lucky. I was not. So I guess there's always one in the group.
And you're the expert here. You're the one with the most experience when it comes to shows and bargaining and that sort of thing.
She was also the cutest salesman.
All right. Well, once again, I would like to thank Kyle, Mike, and Mike for joining us today. And we are going to include also underneath our website a link to a video that we found. Phil actually forwarded us the YouTube address from a group that actually shot video there of the dealers and the toys and the cosplay contest, and they turned it into kind of like a little music video where you can actually see all this material that we're talking about. As a matter of fact, some of the stuff we bought shows up here or there. And I think the name of the group that put the video together, the name of their YouTube channel is called TV Little House. Plus, we'll also include a couple of links to the next ToyConNJ show coming up in October, and also the link to the regular monthly show that they have in Wayne at the Wayne NJ Toy and Collectibles Show. So take a look at that when you have a chance. On behalf of all of us here, I'd like to thank you for listening, and we will see you here next time at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Ready to activate the Jaeger in 3, 2, 1.
The Russians control the Jaeger called Cherno Alpha. It looks like a big tank. It's incredibly powerful.
There's the Chinese Jaeger, run by the Ways, the triplets.
I think that would be really visually exciting to see 3 people piloting one of these Jaegers.
A Striker is the Mark V Jaeger. She's faster and more fluid and more agile than any other Jaeger.
Gypsy Danger is the very special Jaeger. That's the sort of hero Jaeger.
You know, Gypsy Danger, we wanted very much to feel like a classical gunslinger. And we gave it the anatomy of a big cowboy.
Oh, it's vintage. Well, it is. From 1996 already. How many years is that already?
You should tell them. If Leia looks like a gorilla, it's not vintage. If they look like He-Man figures, they're not vintage.